"I don't have time for you, Dad. My daughter-in-law ignored me for years and even kicked me out of the house. On my 70th birthday, she received a gift, but it wasn't what she expected. The silence in my small apartment was a stark contrast to the cacophony that had become my life in the house I had gifted to my son, Michael, and his wife, Susan. 70 years. 70 years I had toiled, saved, and dreamt of a comfortable old age surrounded by family. Instead, I found myself alone, staring at a meager slice of birthday cake, the flickering candle a pathetic symbol of a life that felt increasingly extinguished. My wife Eleanor had been gone for 5 years, and the warmth her presence brought had slowly been replaced by the cold indifference of my son's new family. It wasn't always like this. Michael had been a loving son, and when he met Susan, I had welcomed her with open arms. But somewhere along the line, things had soured. Susan, with her sharp tongue and sharper elbows, had gradually taken over. My opinions were dismissed, my suggestions scoffed at, and eventually, my presence seemed to irritate her like a persistent fly. It started subtly. A sigh when I asked for help with the television remote. A roll of her eyes when I shared a memory. Then came the not-so-subtle hints that I was in the way, that the house felt crowded. Michael, once so attentive, became a shadow of his former self, his eyes darting nervously toward Susan whenever I spoke. The house, our family home for over 40 years, had become their domain. The furniture Eleanor and I had painstakingly chosen was replaced with sleek modern pieces that felt cold and impersonal. My garden, my pride and joy, was redesigned into a sterile, low-maintenance landscape by a company Susan hired. My memories, the very essence of my life with Eleanor, were being systematically erased. The final blow came 6 months ago. I had a mild fall in the kitchen, a momentary dizziness that sent me sprawling. Susan's reaction wasn't concern, but exasperation. "Honestly, Michael," she had said, her voice dripping with annoyance, "this is becoming too much. We can't be constantly worrying about him." Michael, his face etched with discomfort, had mumbled something about it being a one-off, but the look in Susan's eyes told me everything. The following week, they presented me with options. A small retirement home on the outskirts of the city was the most prominently featured. It was clean, they assured me, and I would have my own space. What they didn't say was that it was far away, that my friends wouldn't be able to visit easily, and that I would be utterly alone. The argument that followed was brief and brutal. I pleaded. I reminded them of all the sacrifices I had made, the long hours I had worked to provide for Michael. Susan remained unmoved, her face a mask of cold indifference. Michael avoided my gaze, his silence a deafening betrayal. On a rainy Tuesday morning, they packed my belongings, a few clothes, some photographs, and the worn armchair Eleanor had loved, into the back of their SUV, and drove me to the sterile building that was now my home. How could they? How could the son I had cherished and the woman I had welcomed into my family treat me with such callous disregard? Was my life so worthless to them? But amidst the anger and despair, a tiny seed of resolve had begun to sprout. I wasn't senile. My mind was still sharp, honed by years of navigating the complexities of life and business. They saw me as a doddering old man, easily dismissed and forgotten. They underestimated me, and that, I realized, was their greatest mistake. My 70th birthday, a milestone that should have been filled with love and laughter, became my point of rupture. As I sat there, the single candle burning low, a new feeling washed over me. Not sadness, not anger, but a cold, steely determination. I would not be a victim. I would not fade away into quiet oblivion. I would make them see. I would make them understand the weight of their actions. A plan began to form in the quiet corners of my mind. A plan as intricate and carefully constructed as the grandfather clock that had once stood proudly in our hallway, now likely relegated to some dusty corner of their oversized house. It wouldn't be quick and it wouldn't be easy, but it would be effective. It would be justice, served cold and with a poetic twist that they would never see coming. The years of being underestimated were about to become my greatest weapon. My first step was to gather information. While Michael and Susan believed they had neatly severed ties, they had overlooked one crucial detail: my network. Over the years, I had built a considerable number of connections. Old friends, former colleagues, even distant relatives, people who knew me, who respected me, and who wouldn't dismiss me as a senile old man. I started making calls, initially casual, catching up on old times, but subtly steering the conversations towards Michael and Susan's affairs. It didn't take long to uncover the truth. Susan, it turned out, was not the paragon of financial responsibility she portrayed herself to be. Her frequent shopping sprees, The expensive renovations to the house, the luxury car, none of it was truly sustainable on Michael's middle management salary. Whispers of mounting debts and questionable investments started to reach my ears. Apparently, they had taken out a significant loan against the house, leveraging the very property I had gifted them. And Susan's business ventures were less successful than she let on. My heart ached for Michael, caught in the web of Susan's ambition and recklessness, but my pity was tempered by the memory of his silence, his complicity in my exile. He had chosen his side, and now he would have to face the consequences. My most valuable asset, I realized, was time. They were living in the present, blinded by their immediate desires and perceived security. I, on the other hand, was playing the long game. I started meticulously reviewing my own financial affairs, my pension, my modest savings. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to give me a degree of independence and, more importantly, leverage. I also sought legal counsel. I found a young, sharp lawyer named Ms. Evans, who listened patiently as I recounted my story. She was appalled by the way I had been treated and, more importantly, saw the strategic possibilities in my situation. We discussed the transfer of the house to Michael, the lack of any formal agreement protecting my interests, and the potential avenues for recourse. Ms. Evans advised caution, emphasizing the need for solid evidence and a carefully executed plan. Over the next few months, I became a student of their lives from a distance. My old friend David, who lived a few streets away from Michael and Susan, became my unwitting informant. He would casually mention seeing their new car, the delivery trucks arriving with expensive furniture, or the occasional heated arguments spilling out onto their perfectly manicured lawn. Each tidbit of information was a piece of the puzzle, helping me to understand their vulnerabilities and the pressure they were under. I also revisited my past. My career in engineering had taught me the importance of precision and foresight. I had a knack for identifying weaknesses in systems and devising solutions. Now I turned that analytical mind towards my own situation. What were their weaknesses? Their greed, their arrogance, their underestimation of me. What were my strengths? My life experience, my financial independence, and the element of surprise. The plan began to solidify. It wasn't about revenge, I told myself, though a small part of me did relish the thought of their comeuppance. It was about reclaiming my dignity, about showing them that I was not someone to be discarded. It was about poetic justice, the consequences of their actions mirroring the pain they had inflicted upon me. As the months passed, I could feel a shift within me. The bitterness was slowly being replaced by a quiet sense of purpose. I was no longer just an old man waiting for the inevitable. I was a strategist, a chess player carefully positioning my pieces for the final move. Michael and Susan continued their lives, oblivious to the storm gathering on the horizon, confident in their comfortable existence. They had no idea that the old man they had so easily dismissed was about to deliver a birthday gift they would never forget. The date approached, Michael's 45th birthday, a day Susan always made a grand affair. I knew they would be distracted, their focus on celebrations and appearances. It was the perfect time to strike. Ms. Evans had been diligently working behind the scenes, gathering the necessary documents and preparing the legal groundwork. My calls with David had provided crucial insights into their financial situation. The loan on the house was substantial, and Susan's business was reportedly facing significant losses. Their carefully constructed facade of affluence was beginning to crack under the weight of their debt. On the morning of Michael's birthday, I made a few key phone calls. The first was to the bank that held the mortgage on their house. Posing as a concerned relative, I inquired about the loan terms and the potential consequences of default. The information I gleaned confirmed my suspicions. They were dangerously leveraged. My second call was to a local real estate agent, someone I had known for many years. I asked him to discreetly assess the current market value of the house. He agreed, promising to provide a comprehensive appraisal within a few days. The final call was the most crucial. It was to an old acquaintance, a retired financial advisor I had known for decades. I explained my situation, outlining Michael and Susan's financial precariousness and my desire to secure my own future. He listened intently, his experienced mind quickly grasping the nuances of the situation. "Arthur," he said, his voice thoughtful, "you have a few options. Given the circumstances and if what you suspect about their finances is true, you could potentially, well, let's just say, there are ways to create a significant financial event. It would not only secure my financial future, but also directly impact Michael and Susan's precarious situation." That afternoon, as I knew they would be busy preparing for Michael's birthday party. Ms. Evans and I met at her office. We reviewed the documents, finalized the strategy, and signed the necessary papers. A sense of calm descended upon me. The waiting was over. The wheels were in motion. The following week, the real estate appraisal came back. The house, inflated by the recent market boom, was worth a considerable sum. However, the amount of the outstanding loan was alarmingly high, leaving them with very little equity. My financial advisor then executed the final steps of the plan. It was a subtle move, almost invisible but with profound consequences. It triggered a clause related to the original transfer of the property, a clause they had never bothered to read or understand, so confident were they in their ownership. The first sign that something was amiss came a few weeks later. I received a frantic call from Michael. His voice was strained, filled with a mixture of anger and panic. "Dad, what have you done?" "We've received some very strange notices." "What kind of notices, Michael?" "Susan is furious," he said, his voice trembling. "She's saying you're behind this." "Michael, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm living quietly in my apartment. Why would I do anything to cause you trouble?" "But these notices, they're talking about foreclosure on your house." "Oh, Michael, that's terrible. How could this happen?" Over the next few weeks, the situation escalated rapidly. The legal notices became more frequent and more threatening. Susan's calls were filled with venomous accusations. Her carefully constructed composure finally shattered. Michael, caught in the middle, was a mess of anxiety and confusion. They tried to fight it, of course. They hired lawyers, desperately trying to unravel the complex legal web that had ensnared them. But Ms. Evans had been meticulous. Every step of the plan was legally sound, based on the original transfer documents and their own financial dealings. The truth eventually emerged. The obscure clause in the property transfer, combined with the carefully timed financial instrument, had effectively given me a significant stake in the house, a stake that, due to their precarious financial situation, I could now leverage. The final blow came a few months later. Unable to secure further loans and facing imminent foreclosure, Michael and Susan were forced to sell the house. The market had cooled slightly, and with the added pressure of a quick sale, they received far less than they had hoped for. After paying off the massive loan and the various legal fees, they were left with virtually nothing. I watched from a distance as the "for sale" sign went up, then came down. I didn't gloat, at least not outwardly, but a deep sense of satisfaction settled within me. It wasn't about the money, though the unexpected financial security was certainly a welcome relief. It was about the justice. They had disregarded me, exploited my generosity, and thrown me out of my own home. Now they were facing the consequences of their actions. I heard through mutual acquaintances that they had moved to a small rented apartment in a less desirable part of town. Susan's expensive car was gone, replaced by a much older, less flashy model. Their social life, once filled with lavish parties and displays of wealth, had become noticeably quieter. On my next birthday, I bought myself a new armchair, a comfortable one just like Eleanor's. I placed it by the window of my small apartment where I could watch the world go by. There was no grand celebration, just a quiet sense of peace. My phone rang. It was my granddaughter, Emily, Michael's daughter from his first marriage, whom Susan had always kept at arm's length. "Grandpa," she said, her voice warm and genuine, I heard what happened. I'm so sorry for how they treated you." She told me about her life, her studies, her dreams. It felt good to have a real connection again, a genuine familial bond that wasn't tainted by greed or manipulation. The poetic justice had been served. Michael and Susan had lost their home, their wealth, and their social standing. They were now facing the financial insecurity they had so carelessly inflicted upon me. And I, the old man they had dismissed and forgotten, had reclaimed my dignity and found a measure of peace. My 70th birthday gift to Susan wasn't a material object, but a harsh lesson in the consequences of ingratitude and the enduring power of a quietly determined spirit. My life wasn't extinguished. It had simply turned a new, more peaceful page.